So today we're going to talk about why screens aren't the problem, but this is. And I'm going to break down that digital devices are not inherently the issue, but how and when they are used and at what times throughout a child's journey really does matter. And so let's talk about screen strategies that work with your child's healing versus against it. So the thing is that you don't need to cut out screens completely. And I think that people assume when I talk about it that that's what we're looking for. But you do need a strategy that supports your child's nervous system and developmental instead of hijacking it, because that is the power of what a screen can do. So truthfully, most screen use is passive and tied to addictive reward loops. What does that mean? It means that when we're watching a screen, or your child specifically is watching a screen and they're supposed to be immersed in the world around them, there is something that happens that can hijack their development. And I want to share some insight, especially if you have the child who is fast forwarding, like they're at the point where now the satisfaction of even something that's bright like Coco Melon, or that they're fast forwarding through like Shrek to their favorite part. You may notice that the parts that they're fast forwarding to are the most colorful, engaged, action-packed parts. And when we're immersed in this, it creates a dopamine loop, which means that we want to re-feel that same exact sensation that we're feeling. It's basically like an addict that never needs to take a break in between their sessions. And when we're looking at not taking a break in between sessions, what happens in this case is there's not an overdose, but there is a version of that. There's an overwhelm and a depletion of the dopamine loop. And that ends up in meltdowns. There comes a time where your child won't even be happy with the most like jam-packed, exciting part of what they're watching that used to stimulate them. They're always looking for stimulation. And there's a lot of scientific data behind what happens in the brain in the pleasure reward system is that if it is constantly hijacked, we actually tend to feel less reward and less pleasure. And so we go and try to go above and beyond to recreate that same feeling. And that means that your child, if they're in this from the morning they get up until the evening, what I hear is, well, an excuse around autism that if my child has autism, so they have more screens. These are the children that need less screens than children who don't have autism, because they are able to regulate. Neurotypical children can regulate and disengage in a different way. And even now we're starting to see that this is starting to be an issue for them as well. So imagine the world for a child with autism, especially who already can have nervous system deregulation, can already have meltdowns, is already sometimes very experiencing their world differently than a neurotypical child in a more stressful foundation, which is part of the deregulation. We need to be focused on helping them to explore the world around them. Now, imagine that they have this huge amount of dopamine rush all the time. And then they're expected, right? When we take the screen away, they're expected to go experience the world, which would feel very boring. If in your world, you're perceiving something as very pleasurable, very exciting, and you can repeat it loop by loop by loop, when you take that away, everything else in the mundane world will never satisfy you. And it is the same thing with an addictive personality. Unless they're in their pleasure point of dopamine, that's actually what addiction does in many cases, in many substances. It's just a repeat, right? You don't feel the same way until you redo that high. So this is what our children are being subjected to. And of course, there are ways to navigate this very effectively and from an empowered space. The other thing is sensory kids are already overstimulated. We already know that a lot of children are experiencing their world almost in a heightened state, like the filters within their brains don't seem to be working as effectively, which is why we have noise canceling headphones, which now have been proven to actually cause more harm. We also know that the rapid sounds from these bright lights, the rapid sounds and blue light fuels chaos. And this has to do with our hormone system and what is impacted. We are meant to see blue light from the sun through, and not directly looking at it, but being outside in the blue sky and having the blue sky reflect off the sun. These things help to manage our circadian rhythm, which is why many children who have screen addictions that are moving forward in that are moving for I'm freezing, sorry, that are moving forward in the evening time. Well, they are now often the ones who don't sleep as well. Because when our cortisol is meant to dip, it's starting to go up instead again. And so some children will completely swap their night and their day and their circadian rhythm just because they're on screens for so long. But in some cases, we know that screens can also calm, teach, or connect, right? We know that a lot of families have really shared a lot about this with us, with their experiences that screens help their children learn how to speak and spell. So I understand that sometimes they are a tool that are being used in school, so they're unavoidable. Now, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Natalie Pelto. I am the co-founder of Blue Life RX, and I am the creator of the Blue Life Autism program, the only lifestyle medicine program currently that is completely focused on helping children with autism and ADHD thrive and break through being nonverbal, break through communication barriers, and help their children from a foundational state where they can regulate, share their gifts to the world, become independent, and live the life of their dreams. So if you want to know more about that, go ahead and check some of the links out in the description. But for now, let us dive into a little bit more of the story of screens. And I was very lucky. The reason that I'm so passionate about this topic specifically is that I also had a child that was on the spectrum and that was considered to be what we call now as the profound spectrum. I'm glad we're renaming things. We need, I think, a little bit more differentiation than that. But my son was considered one of the most severe, and this really affected his life in so many ways. Now, as we went through our journey, screens were not a big part of our journey, and I am so regulated, so grateful that this was the case. And so now, knowing what we know now in our world, there's so many variations and so many differences. So having access to all this knowledge, what do we do? Now that we know that screens are impacting our children in such a profound way, and some of the things that are linked to screens for families, in case you may not know, is meltdowns, deregulation of emotions, sleep disturbances, lack of connections, which impacts social behavior. So all of the things that are linked to the behaviors or the diagnosis of autism in some cases can be linked to screens should they be something that was used when they were very young. They even have gone as far as saying that some children are being diagnosed with virtual autism. And this is in that area of neurodevelopmental disorders where a child that is made to experience the world around them is losing all of these pieces, right? They're no longer building motor skills and developmental milestones based on immersing themselves in the world. And so how do we do it? How do we overcome it? So I'm going to give you 4 tips to help overcome screen time in your home in a way that makes sense for you. So what we want to do is we want to create a screen menu is a great option to start. So this looks like what's allowed, when, and why. And we have to start to explore, and this will be talked about in a completely different video, but our children's learner type. And some of these are going to fall in kinesthetic learners, we have visual learners, and we have auditory learners. So for our children, and I hate like that the focus is always on doing, sticker boards or vision boards or immersive, visual boards. Although I think they're super helpful for a visual learner, they are not as helpful for someone who, let's just say, is an auditory or kinesthetic learner. So we need to explore what that means. And to break it down quickly, does your child, if they're sensory seekers, they're jumping on trampoline, they're jumping from couch to couch, they are learning in a different way. They are learning through immersion of their senses. They enjoy being hugged tight. They want to be touched. And so using some of these in your cues and triggers or timer systems when it's time to remove from screen will break them out of a dopamine loop, which will be more effective than showing them a visual board of different times throughout the day. But for visual learners, a vision board or a immersive picture board is going to be effective for them. And so we want to use that as our tools. And then lastly, if we have an auditory learner that is much better at taking information and receptive language is there, then we want to be using very specific auditory cues, such as timers. So being consistent in the times you use screens is also going to be effective. Tip number 2 is that swap doom scrolling for healing tools. Be specific with what you want your children to watch. YouTube is one of the first things I tell people to remove. Get rid of the Coco Melon. Get rid of all these shows that literally provide a consistent dopamine rush of swapping scenes within under 10 seconds. This is very different from when we were children, even watching Sesame Street or Mr. Rogers. And Sesame Street was kind of like the beginning of this trajectory. So having that as as a cue or an understanding that what our children are watching is going to impact the difference of the type of dopamine fix that they're getting, or the dopamine fill that they're getting. So think more along the lines of letting them watch yoga videos, animal sounds, interactive storyboards, also including parts of their learner type in there. And there are so many immersive apps now that can help you with this. And of course, one of the tip number 3 is to build in detox anchors before and after screen time. So what is a detox anchor? It's a fancy way of saying, what is the transition piece? Do not expect your child to just get off the screen and happily just do nothing or to keep themselves busy. Their brain is no longer able to, their motivation has been depleted. Dopamine is the link to being motivated to do something. In caveman days, it was used as, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me. Okay, maybe we take that out or we blooper that. So dopamine was something that we used in caveman days as like a motivation to find animals. If we were hunting in hunting tribes, we would see like the broken piece of a branch, and that would create a little dopamine fix to keep going. It was like the clues, right, that we would find. Same thing with foraging. If we would see something of bright color, it would create a little dopamine loop of satisfaction to keep moving into that direction to cultivate. So these are things that are being hijacked, is our very deep, profound like limbic system, which is the system of survival. And so we want to make sure that we're providing the stimulation that is not going to elevate to the point where there's only so many times that our neuroreceptors or our neurotransmitters are going to hook in. And eventually we deplete ourselves, and that's when we end up with a meltdown and nothing that can satisfy this a child's urge for looking for more. So having a detox anchor means that before and after screen times, you have very set things that you do. And the more that these are repeated, like that they're part of a system and a routine, the more that your child will be able to disengage, knowing that there is an action after that's going to be of great value to them and that they're going to enjoy doing. A good example is making sure that they're going outside. They could be grounding with their feet on the ground. They could be going to immerse themselves. Like coloring is not generally the best thing to start, but something very activated, jumping on a trampoline, just doing something, playing tag, spinning, things that are going to provide stimulation for your child. So after and then before, making sure that they're hydrated, that their protein intake is good, that their nutrition is good, because it's going to provide the dopamine needs that they have and that they build. We build all of these things from the nutrients that we eat. So the more picky that I see children, the more meltdowns they have after screens. It seems like such a far stretch, but when we think about the fact that every single if we think of every single dopamine loop takes at least 7 to 10 nutrients to even finish one entire loop, if we don't have those nutrients, we're actually depleting our dopamine faster. So we actually should have less screen time. So children on the spectrum that are picky really need to be increasing their good foods and things that are going to help build these things out. And then start with just one switch. That's my tip number 4. No screens before food, no screens after 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, where it's going to raise dopamine again. And then making sure that we're just really sticking to what we're providing in our education, or in what we're providing as consistent. So consistent repetitive actions creates both routines for our children that they prefer. Adaptability is a whole other video, but knowing this, it's going to help you to build a really powerful developmental tool, right? If you're using screens that are educational in a time where you're actually cooking dinner versus giving it to them from the time that they wake up until they go to bed, it's going to have a huge impact both in your in your connection with your child and their ability to learn from you and to stay connected and regulated. And there is a process to this. All right. So lastly, if you're screen stressed and snack stuck, download. So I don't want you to download anything. I actually just want you to click the link below. We are going, if it's, we are doing and running our Screen Less challenge starting next week. So you definitely want to be joining us there. Where it is a completely free challenge of more education, daily videos, and action items on how to move forward. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, save, share, all the things. And I can't wait to see you in our next video.